Hello and welcome to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com, where we bring you news, insight and analysis on that most important of the least important things, football. I'm Duncan Castles and I'm joined this week by one of the executive directors of Portuguese newspaper Record and the latest of our Transfers podcast regulars to pick up a prize for his journalism, collecting a Prémio José Maria Pedroto from Portugal's Coaches Association in the past week. Parabéns and welcome back to the Transfers podcast, Sergio Krithinas.
Well, thank you, Duncan. It's funny that because I never had an award before, and I got the award last Saturday given by the Portuguese Football Coaches Association, and the award has the name of José Maria Pedroto, who was a very influential coach in Portugal in the late 60s and the 70s and early 80s. It was actually the man who built the foundations for the new FC Porto that we know right now, the new big FC Porto that won twice the European Cup, plus twice the UEFA Cup, and also another handful of international trophies, and also many Portuguese leagues. So he's a very Pedroto was a crucial man in the history of Portuguese football, and so it's quite an honor to get an award with his name. Yeah. So I was quite proud, although I tried to disguise it.
We know you're always very modest, Sergio, but we're really pleased to see first Jonathan Northcroft and then yourself being recognised as what you are, the best in your country and in your profession. But
Thank you.
In this week of Portuguese triumphs, let's talk a little bit of one of the partial Portuguese victories of Paris Saint-Germain and what they're planning to do to further strengthen a side that's won the treble in France and we've just won the Champions League in the most convincing manner ever in terms of a final victory. We can tell you in the Transfers podcast that PSG's football advisor, Luis Campos, has opened direct discussions with Bournemouth over the transfer of Ilya Zabarnyi, the English Premier League club's Ukrainian centre-back. He's a 22-year-old, 1m89, has been outstanding in his 2 seasons at Bournemouth, 36 Premier League appearances in last season, 37 the year before. One of the quickest centre-backs in the Premier League, and very much a modern central defender who Campos wants to bring into the side as a kind of successor in situ to Captain Marquinhos. Marquinhos will remain the first choice, but Zabarnyi would be brought in and allowed to develop alongside him in the next season. It doesn't look like being a straightforward transfer to complete. As we know, Bournemouth have already sold Zabarnyi's centre-back partner, Dean Howson, to Real Madrid this summer, achieving a fee of £50 million, which was a set release clause in his contract. They are also likely to sell Milos Kerkez, with Kerkez having agreed personal terms with Liverpool in the discussion over the transfer fee on that one. So they are not in any need for cash. In fact, they want to try and keep as many of their successful side together. And their response to that approach from Paris Saint-Germain was to say that they wanted a higher fee for Zabarnyi than they receive for Madrid than Howson, which is some way apart from Paris Saint-Germain's valuation of the player. Sergio, on our SciSports estimated transfer values, Zabarnyi comes out at €59.8 million, which is just about where Howson's fee for Real Madrid is. However, Howson's younger, he's taller, and he's a Spain international moving to Real Madrid. Do you think it's realistic for Bournemouth to expect to achieve a larger transfer fee for Zabarnyi than they received for Howson?
I think they will try, honestly, because as you said, they're not in need of fresh money because they just sold Dean Howson, and and they will likely get also a big amount for Milos Kerkez. So I think they are as we say in Portugal, they are just sitting back and relaxed, waiting for the offers to come. Of course, it's hard for them to keep players when such a big club like Paris Saint-Germain or Real Madrid or Liverpool approaches the players. But I think they will push the price up to a certain, up to the maximum they can. I think their sporting director is also a Portuguese guy, the president of football operations. That's his role over there. It's a Portuguese, Tiago Pinto. And in Benfica, he was also very good. He was in Benfica and also Roma, and he has a good history, a good record of getting good deals when he sells players. He was the sporting director at Benfica when they sold João Felix to Atletico Madrid for 126 million euros, which was the record transfer fee in Portugal. So I'm pretty sure. First, they don't want to sell him because they have already lost one of the center backs, and they don't need as well. So I think it has to be a really good deal for Bournemouth to do it.
You talk about Pinto's success in selling players for high amounts. He was also the man who drove the purchase of Housen from Juventus last summer for an initial 15.2 million euros. So he must be in club owner Bill Foley's good books after that first season. Understand that Campos and Pinto have a reasonably close relationship, and they met on Monday in the Algarve to discuss this deal. Is that correct?
Yes, I was told they had a meeting. I'm not sure exactly what they discussed, but I was told there was a meeting between them. They have a good relationship since the past. Even when Thiago was in Roma, they did some deals with PSG. Wijnaldum, for instance, he went from PSG to Roma. Renato Sanchez as well, the Portuguese midfielder. So I'm pretty sure they have a good relationship, and I wouldn't be surprised they are talking about players that could be interesting to PSG, but also players that could be interesting to Bournemouth. And because, for instance, Housen is a good example. He was. As you said, he was in Juventus, and then he spent some months on loan at Roma, but he was highly valued at Bournemouth, and I think it was probably a surprise for many people to see the way he developed in the last year playing for Bournemouth. And sometimes Tiago Pinto is the kind of guy that sees ahead of his time on the way he identifies the exact players and can understand how they will progress and develop in the future.
So a possibility that he will identify someone in Paris Saint-Germain's very productive academy and suggest including him in the deal.
I will not be surprised at all if Tiago Pinto tries to get one of the youngsters at PSG who probably doesn't have much game time there or much space, and see potential to bring them to Bournemouth. Yeah.
Let's talk about Portugal Saint-Germain and their and their Champions League triumph. Obviously, Luis Campos, the man who completely overhauled the squad, brought Luis Enrique in as coach, and in a 3-year period has turned them into, I think, clearly not just the best team in European football in terms of having won that Champions League title, but the best team in European football in terms of the quality and the entertainment value of their play in combination with the players he's brought in and the coach he's brought in. Campos, Portuguese, obviously, 4 members of the team, 3 in particular Portugal internationals central to that success. Vitinha signed for 40 million euros. João Neves taken from Benfica for 60 million euros last summer. Nuno Mendes, who's been given a new contract this season, and Gonçalo Ramos. How was that success received in Portugal, Sergio? Was there a lot of pride taken?
Yes, definitely. And as you know, in Portugal we have 3 big clubs who have like more than 90% of the fans, and Benfica, which is the club with more supporters, Sporting and Porto, and these 3 clubs combined, I think they have probably 92 or 93% of the football fans in Portugal. So it's a very unique landscape of football society in Portuguese football. So João Neves and Gonçalo Ramos are Benfica's academy products. Vitinha is from Porto and Nuno Mendes is from Sporting. So you see that the top 3 clubs of Portugal see themselves in the team that PSG has built. Of course, in the case of Benfica, there's a lot of people arguing how come Benfica sold João Neves so cheap last summer. It was 60 plus some bonuses, I think, with winning the Champions League and plus the league and the number of games he's played. I think the bonuses have already climbed 4 million euros. So I think that the deal will probably be at 65 at some point. But still, lots of people say that it was a really cheap sale because nowadays people think that he could be worth more than that. Honestly, I think Sela played from Portugal at the age of 19 or 20 when he was sold.
Yeah, 19 when he was sold, I think.
Yeah, with this amount of money, it's impossible to say no for a midfielder who is not a striker, a guy that is not scoring many goals. So it's impossible to say it was a bad deal for Benfica because it's what the transfer window, the transfer market tells you that a player like him is worth. So, but there's this pride. There's also a sense of entertainment. There's also, of course, the sad story of Luis Enrique's tragedy with his daughter was also a subject in the last weeks. So I think it was like a fairy tale that ended well in the sense that the team that everybody wanted to win won, and they won clearly. They had this 5-0 win, which was massive. And now the big question is, how do you put all these players, especially the midfielders Vitinha and João Neves, together in the Portuguese national team? That's a big question mark, and that's something nobody else has figured out how to have them to play at the same level as they are playing in PSG. So there's a lot of work from the coach. I think there's it's not only the players, it's the players who are perfect for the way the coach wants to play, and you have to give a lot of credit to Luis Campos because he was the one that's probably understood which kind of coach he had to work with and which kind of players, which profile of players he would fit better is that style. And so that's a marriage, a perfect marriage between what the coach wants and thinks about football and the kind of players they brought.
Yeah, I think a perfect marriage is a very good way to describe this team. And I was sort of thinking it's quite hard to pick out the most important player or even the most important players in the side because of the way they play, because of the importance of their combination play, because of the fashion in which they press the opponent so aggressively and so systematically and attack so systematically as well. But what's clear is Vitinha and João Neves is an absolutely exceptional heart of a midfield. And I was surprised to see that UEFA's technical observer team managed to select Declan Rice ahead of João Neves in their Champions League Team of the Year. I think basically because they didn't want to have too many PSG players in it. But for me, clearly Neves is a better performer than in an all-round level than Declan Rice. So I'm surprised to hear you say that it's a problem for Portugal because surely two players who play together every week in such a successful team, it should be you slot them into the national team and then you build around them.
That's what would make sense. I'm going to say something that probably I shouldn't do, because we are recording this before the the Germany-Portugal game for the Nations League. So I'm not sure if they will start together, but they haven't started. I think they just started one game together in the national team. So it's really strange how does it happen. But of course, when you have to add up Bruno Fernandes and you have to add Bernardo Silva as well, and then you have Rafael Leão, and then you have Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, and then probably you think you need a more typical traditional holding midfielder like João Palhinha or Ruben Neves. So I think sometimes it's not easy to have everybody happy at such a level, because players like Bernardo Silva or Bruno Fernandes, they are top players, and they play in every team in the world, and of course Portugal cannot afford to leave them out.
It's such a talented squad. I mean, I've had conversations with a number of people in the game recently, and they've talked about how they think this is the most talented Portuguese squad ever. As you say, we're recording on Wednesday evening. I think the front page of your newspaper today was talking about the Portugal national team and talking about Roberto Martinez's future as national team coach, or lack of it. Tell us what your story is saying, and what you expect to happen over the next few weeks with the leadership of Portugal.
Yeah, on the front page, it's Martinez at risk, because it's clear and everybody knows that the chances of Martinez losing his job are big if he fails to win the Nations League, or if he loses with Germany. Because the fact is, Martinez was hired by the previous FA president, Fernando Gomes, who meanwhile has stepped down from the job because he did 3 terms, and the Portuguese law only allows him to do 3 consecutive terms as president. So after 12 years, he left the Portuguese FA, and he was replaced by Pedro Proença, who was the previous chairman of the league, the Portuguese league. And he was elected, and clearly he has other ideas for the national team, for all the national teams, actually. I think that now that the season is coming to an end officially in June, I think there will be probably many coaches from even young national teams, or futsal, or other kinds of football, that probably will be sacked, and they will be replaced by others. And the fact is that Pedro Proença, the new president of the Portuguese Federation, I think he clearly has other names on his mind. There are 3 names who are obvious right now. José Mourinho, because it's always been the dream for everyone in Portugal to see José Mourinho as the head coach of the national team. But also Jorge Jesus, who is out of job right now after leaving Al Hilal from Saudi Arabia.
And after failing to get the Brazil national team job.
He was very close to the Brazil national team job, but then they went for Carlo Ancelotti, and also Sergio Conceição, who has been released also from AC Milan, and is free right now. So there are 3 top coaches. Any of them would suit, I think, this profile of high profile coach in the national team. Of course, José Mourinho has this huge past and then a big CV with him, but he's under contract with Fenerbahce, and he's the most expensive of the 3. He has a salary which is around 10 million euros net, which I think it's impossible to afford to a federation like the Portuguese Federation. Plus, from what I know, I think José Mourinho, he wants his dream job is to be Portuguese national coach in the World Cup 2030, because it will be organized by Portugal, Spain, and Morocco, and he wants to be the coach on his home World Cup. And probably now it's too early for that. Still 5 years until then. 5 years and 2 big competitions, 2 major competitions, next year's World Cup and then the Euros in 28. So probably Jose Mourinho will be waiting for another year or another 3 years eventually to land the job, which gives some strength to the chances of Jorge Jesus and Sergio Conceição, which are two managers who are very, very highly rated by the Portuguese FA president.
There have been direct conversations between Mourinho and the Portuguese Federation over taking this job, and it's been discussed seriously. As you mention, Mourinho does not want to leave Turkey without being compensated for the second year of his salary, which is problematic because I think Fenerbahce are very well aware that Mourinho would like to leave at present and feel that they shouldn't have to pay him to exit if that's what he wants to do. Interestingly, Fenerbahce parted company with their long-standing sports director Mario Branco, another Portuguese. In the past week, Branco was directly involved in hiring Mourinho and praised by Mourinho upon his exit, who said he was the best sports director he'd worked with. Sergio, do you think Proença is correct in seeking a replacement for Martinez? Is this the right path for the Portuguese national team to go down?
Can I reply that in 1 year or something? after the World Cup? It's really hard to tell. I mean, Martinez has been trying to please the fans, please everybody, but of course, when you have to make choices, first of all, for a 23, 24, 25 man squad, you have to leave some good players out. And then, of course, he has been since he arrived under the attack of the especially Sporting fans who complain that Sporting players have not the recognition they should have in the national team after winning the league 3 times actually in the last 5 years. So he's been, and the fact that he's also not Portuguese, he's Spanish, of course, and he's Catalan actually, but he's from our rivals, if you can say that. I think it hasn't helped him in the sense that it's very easy to criticize him and to attack him. I think he has done good things, but of course you judge the work of a coach at the top level by his results, and the result in the Euros was not brilliant, although Portugal started well with a good win, but then the way Portugal Portugal was a bit unlucky against France when we were knocked out in the penalty shootout in the quarterfinals. But Portugal was really poor against Slovenia, for instance, and Portugal was lucky to go through that game. And Portugal lost against Armenia as well. So lots of question marks around Martinez's job. But it's impossible. Football has this thing that you can do everything right and don't get a good result, and then you can do everything wrong and still get the good results. So it's really hard to judge Martinez because there's been some ups and some downs on his path until now.
There's also, for whoever takes the job or whether Martinez remains in the job, there is the problem of handling Cristiano Ronaldo, who expects to be playing for the national team, but it's probably at the stage of his career where he shouldn't be starting for the national team, and him starting the team affects the way in which they play. I mean, you've mentioned there that Jose Mourinho is thinking about waiting to take the job. Do you think there could be an element of being strategic on his part and allowing someone else to do the difficult work of convincing Ronaldo that he shouldn't be in the team as a starter any longer?
Well, that's a good question. I think Martinez has managed to find a good balance because he has started Ronaldo some games on the bench already. But of course, Ronaldo, he's a special player. You cannot treat Ronaldo as you treat the other players. They are different. From Ronaldo is the biggest star in history of football, one of the best players ever to play the game.
Yeah,
definitely the best player ever in Portuguese football. and so of course you have to respect that history, and you have to respect him as a player. So you don't don't make the lineup and say these guys are playing and Ronaldo's on the bench. You have to involve Ronaldo in a decision like that. And I think honestly, Martinez, it's one of the good things he has done until now. It's to manage Ronaldo and Ronaldo's expectations and his game time as well, because he has in some games, some official games, he has started with Ronaldo on the bench, and I think he understands his role. Of course, in the Euros, Ronaldo probably played too much. In some games that he should not have played, but there was a lot of talk about the record of scoring in I think 6 consecutive Euros, and so I think he probably focused too much on that. But still, there was I think Martinez has been from the beginning has been showing signs that he understands Ronaldo's position and Ronaldo's role in the squad.
The Transfers podcast is running an audience survey at the moment. If you have a few minutes to fill it in, please do, and give us your thoughts on the show and guide us in ways in which we can improve it and bring you better content going forward. The link is in the show notes and also on our social media platforms. We have to talk about another Portuguese coach. Last time you were on this podcast, you gave us a great introduction to many of our listeners to Ruben Amorim, and explained how successful he had been in Portugal and why he'd been so successful, and predicted that he would do well at Manchester United. It hasn't happened for him so far.
Says that you should find another Portuguese correspondent for yourself, Duncan.
Well, I was going to put it this way. He's 15th in the Premier League, a very poor Europa League final with so much on the line. 7 wins, 14 defeats from 27 Premier League games, averaging 1 point a game. He himself described it as a disaster season. Have you changed your mind about Ruben Amorim as a coach, or have you changed your mind about Manchester United as a club, or both?
No, I haven't changed my mind about Ruben Amorim, and I haven't changed my mind about Manchester United, but probably I underestimated how bad Manchester United was, and the fact that Ruben Amorim went to Old Trafford made us in Portugal to follow with more attention the games at Manchester United. And yeah, you can see a lot of problems in that squad. And then you can see it's not only the squad, but because you see how some players who have been really terrible at Manchester United are doing well outside when they left the club. Like McTominay, of course, is doing brilliantly in Italy. Also Antony in Betis is doing really well. So you think it's probably not only the player. You have to figure out what else is going on. Probably it's a club that's been acting like a former lord or something who has no properties or no money left, and they still behave as if they were the biggest club or the most important team in Europe, and they are not. They are really far from that. So I think it will take time to Ruben Amorim, especially now without Champions League money. They will probably need a bit longer to reshape the squad with younger, hungry players. I think that's something they definitely need, and players who are willing to sacrifice themselves for an idea. I see Ruben Amorim said that he sees a lot of similarities between Manchester United and Sporting when he took Sporting 5 years ago, and I can see why he says that. And there's a coincidence as well. Ruben Amorim came to Sporting mid-season. It was already March. Then there was the COVID pandemic, and so the league just finished in July. But the following season, Sporting was going to play Europa League, and they were knocked out in the playoffs, and they were heavily defeated. They lost, I think it was 4-0 or 4-1 at home against the Austrian side last Linz. And Sporting played the whole season without European football, and they managed to win the league. So I really think that it will be a Sporting advantage for Manchester United next season not to have European football, because they will play less games. They will not have the fatigue, and they will not have the mental distraction of playing on Thursdays as well, which would happen if they played the Europa League or Conference League. So I really think that next season they will be way better than they were this season, because Amorim will have players like he wants to, and it was reported what happened with Garnacho, the way he just basically killed Garnacho. That's Amorim, really honest, really blunt, always also talking to the players. And probably the ones that stay there will be players that will be ready to cope with that. So I think that next season, without European football, we will see a team. I don't think they can challenge for the league next season, but I definitely see them finishing top 6, maybe top 4 eventually if they are really, really good. So I think it will be a much better team next season.
You told us about how direct and honest he was in his public conversations and also with the players, and that's been borne out. We saw him at the end of the season saying that if the club wanted him to leave, he would leave without compensation. He's been backed by the club publicly. Omar Barada praising him for what he said and saying that they will support him in this rebuild, but it's an incredible rebuild. As you said, he's killed Garnacho, told him to find a new club. Marcus Rashford was sent out in January. Jadon Sancho sent out and now sent back to the club by Chelsea, who have paid Manchester United £5 million to not take up their obligation, in inverted commas, to buy the player. He has Antony looking for a club, so that's 4 strikers, on several of them on major salaries, who have to be shifted out. They have signed Matheus Cunha this week, paying the €75 million release clause to Wolves to take the Brazil international. It's a huge rebuild that's required. I take your point about it being helpful to Amorim not to have as many games this season. One thing again that you talked about in the podcast was that he has his idea of coaching and that he would stick to that idea of coaching. How realistic do you think it is for him to continue down this path? It's not as though he's only been there a few games now. He's had the best part of a season without that idea taking proper route and turning into results. How realistic to stick with that path and expect that the overhaul and the change of players will be sufficient to make it work?
Well, that's a question. I think that's the question, because Amorim has been changing, trying something different game to game. Even, of course, it's different when you have different players playing in one specific position, because it will change the dynamics of the team. Of course, if you have a right-footed player playing on the left, it's different than having a left-footed player, of course. So I think you will stick to that formation, this 3 in the back formation, but you will probably try to change things in those details, like testing if it's better to have this player on this side or on the other side. But he has not changed since he started in Casa Pia back in probably 10 years ago or something. He's always played with 3 in the back, and he has not changed that during all his career. So he's a kind of guy who is really stubborn in that sense, and he keeps saying something which makes sense, that if Manchester United signed him, it's because they wanted that. They believed in him to do something on his own terms. So he's doing things on his terms, and he will probably, if he has the time, and he will try to adapt the squad to the idea of game that he has. So if it's going to work, I don't know. What I've seen from Amorim, he has a contagious optimism. He's almost contagious. The way he's always looking forward, trying to see the good things in a game that went bad. Is trying to smile, trying to push this confidence to the fans in the press room. He does that as well to the players. So I think it's probably that contagious optimism. It's the thing that will give him time and it will keep him alive for another season at least.
So they made one very significant signing in Cunha, kind of typical Manchester United signings in some ways in recent years, and they're buying a player at the peak of his form, 15 goals and 6 assists for Wolverhampton Wanderers from 33 Premier League appearances this season. 15 goals coming from 6.87 expected goals, which I think it can often be seen as a warning sign when a player's actual goals are so far ahead of their XG. Does Cunha strike you as a very obvious fit to the way Amorim has played and set up his teams in the past?
I can imagine him playing on one of the wings, probably from probably left, moving inwards. Using his right foot. I think that's the most obvious position for him. He has done really well in the last 2 seasons at Wolves. It's true, really good numbers. I think probably I'm too old, but I think everybody's overpaying right now in football. I think 70 million euros for him. It's probably a lot of money, but he's a kind of player with the profile, even his career is a player that has been growing in his career. He's like, okay, he hasn't done well in Atletico Madrid, barely plays that much in Atletico Madrid. Left, as we say in Portugal, by a small door, and now has a chance of his lifetime. So that's the kind of player that normally Amorim would take. The guy that is willing to take the opportunity to play for a top club, and probably was willing to do sacrifices to play at this level.
Another player with a lot of Premier League experience and very high performance in the last few seasons that Manchester United have targeted is Brentford's Bryan Mbeumo. He is in the final year of his contract, or entering the final year of his contract at Brentford, although the club have a single season option to retain him. As I understand, Manchester United are yet to contact Brentford directly, but Brentford are aware that they have spoken to Mbeumo's representatives and aware that Mbeumo is interested in leaving and will ask for over £60 million for a player whose estimated transfer value on FootballTransfers metric is €58.1 million. Again, a player with very, very good numbers, 20 goals and 38 Premier League appearances, 8 assists in the last season, which placed him 4th in the league, behind just Mo Salah, Alexander Isak and Erling Haaland. But also someone who's heavily outperformed his XG with 15 non-penalty goals from 7.6 expected goals. He's very quick. He's positionally incredibly astute, very good passer of the ball, actually only an average finisher if you look at our analytics tools, despite the number of goals he scored this season. And he can play off the wing or as a central striker. Again, do you see him as a natural fit to that Amorim system that was so successful at Sporting, but he hasn't been able to implement successfully at Manchester United as yet?
Yeah, probably he can play both wings as well. So and his speed is something that Amorim really likes. This kind of players who can add speed into the game. I'm not sure if he will be ready, for instance, to play as one of the guys doing the whole wing, or he can play up front. Probably he will play up front because he's a player that normally scores many goals. Okay, he had a really good season with 20 goals this season for Brentford, but he has been very consistent, always scoring around 10 goals and making 10 assists, a bit less than that every season. So he's been very consistent since arriving in England. So it's the kind of player that I can see him being, if Manchester United sign him, a very important squad player. Maybe not a clear starter for them, but a player that will have many games in the season, starting many of them as well. And the fact that he can play in more than one position, it's something that Amorim really likes as well.
It's interesting that they've taken Cunha and are targeting Mbeumo. It looks like they are trying to do something that they haven't done a huge amount of over the last few seasons, which is take players who are Premier League experienced and Premier League successful.
Typical Amorim as well. In Sporting, he signed a lot of players from the Portuguese league, and they were really developed, and their value was really increased a lot when they moved to Sporting. He signed players from Famalicão, from Rio Ave, these kind of middle class players that he made them really good. You can see Pedro Gonçalves, for instance. Even the stars like Gyokeres, he signed them from Coventry. He was playing in the Championship. Morten Hulman, who was the team captain now, they signed him from Lecce in Italy. You see this kind of profile that players who are almost thankful for playing in a big club like Sporting, and now, of course, the same with the differences to Manchester United, of course.
We have to say in this that having lots of Premier League experience and becoming a Manchester United signing didn't exactly work out well for Mason Mount, Alexis Sanchez, Aaron Wan-Bissaka or Harry Maguire, but hopefully Amorim can turn that around. You talked about the quality of his signings and his ability to pick out players and turn them into the top performing version of that player in their career. Do you expect him to target anyone from Portugal or from Sporting for other areas of the team?
I thought he could go for Giovanni Kenda, but meanwhile Chelsea has signed him already.
Yeah.
But I think probably Sporting right now, the players are too expensive. Victor Gyokeres would be the most obvious choice, but Gyokeres is, I think he doesn't fancy that much the possibility of playing in Manchester United right now, because they will not have European football, and also they are probably too far from winning trophies. Trincão would be a good shout, but Sporting will ask a lot of money for him. Pedro Gonçalves, maybe. It's the kind of player that Amorim really likes. Can play midfielder, can play up front in the top three, especially on the left side as well. And he's a tiny, short player, but really smart, who can almost ice skate in a game. You know, you don't see him, running, you don't see him moving around, but he's just there always. You know, typical player that maybe that's the kind of player I would not be surprised Amorim to go to, because he's been one of his boys since the beginning. He also likes players with a bad temper, you know, bad losers. The kind of players who are really upset when they lose, and sometimes do those little tricks to win some advantage, you know.
Well, talking of bad losers, we should discuss Bruno Fernandes. I think is the archetypal example of that type of player. Fascinating situation with Fernandes in that Al Hilal tried to sign him ahead of the Club World Cup. Manchester United allowed those conversations to go ahead. Essentially took a position of they wanted to see what Fernandes's decision would be. As a player who turns 31 in September, contract until 2027 with a further year's option, the highest paid player at the club, estimated transfer value of 56.2 million. Fundamental to the team at present. I mean, basically the central source of goals for Manchester United over the past season, in particular, with 15 assists and 50 Premier League and Europa League appearances last season. I believe you have heard some more detail of what Al Hilal's offer involved, Sergio, after Fernandes went public on Tuesday to say that he would not move to the Saudi Arabian League and that his preference was to stay at the highest level, playing big competitions, and that he wanted to keep being happy at Manchester United.
Yes, I was told that the offer that he got from Al Hilal was lower than it was on the news. I was told it was 18 million euros per season, the offer that Al Hilal made to him. Still, of course, a lot of money, and but it was the figure I got by someone I think who's really that would know for sure. But I'm not surprised that Bruno chose to stay and fight for major trophies because he spent his career on the wrong side of football. In the sense that he was signed by Sporting, and although he was a really impressive player at Sporting and dominating the game in Portugal, he never won the league in Portugal. And then he moved to Manchester United, and he's still yet to win a league. And I can understand that for him could be very frustrating to see that he's already over 30 and he hasn't won a league yet so far. So, and it's the kind of player that he takes really seriously the competition. As you say, he's a bad loser, he's a sour loser in the sense that he's always upset when he loses. You see that in the games. So that's the kind of player that would not turn his back to a club after not winning a major trophy like a league for them.
Did you get any guidance on what Bruno's position was about the way Manchester United dealt with this situation? I'm just looking exactly at the words he said at Portugal's press conference here, and it strikes me there's a bit of room for interpretation in them. And he said, there was a waiting period on my part to think about what the future would hold. I would be open to it if Manchester United felt it was my time to leave. I spoke with Mr. Ruben Amorim, who really tried to talk me out of it. I spoke with the club, which wasn't willing to sell, only if I truly wanted to leave. We never talked about money. That was all handled by my agent, not me. I spoke to my family to understand if that was what I wanted for my future. It was actually my wife who asked me. I never said yes or no. She put my professional priorities ahead of everything else. And then goes on to talk about playing at the highest level. And I guess you could interpret those words as saying, I'm open to other offers. I want to play at the highest level, and Manchester United aren't actually playing at the highest level for the next season. And he was placed in a situation where Manchester United allowed him to discuss this offer. Is there any sense that he's waiting to see what else might transpire?
Probably, yeah, because he didn't say, no, I don't want to go immediately. He said no after hearing the coach saying, I don't want you to go. After almost, he needed to feel loved at Manchester United. That's the feeling I got, that he needed to be sure that he will have an important role next season. That's the impression I got from his statement. So, I think it's natural that Manchester United are through a revolution. They will change a lot of things, probably lots of things in the squad next season, and probably he wanted to be sure that the coach includes him in his plans, and apparently he does. And here you have Bruno Fernandes season over there.
Yeah, and look, there's an alternative interpretation to all of this, which is that Manchester United played this cleverly, in the sense that they allowed Fernandes to make the decision himself, allowed Amorim to persuade him to stay, didn't close the door to the move. And, from a football perspective, you've got to say, not only that is it shown in his goal contribution on the field and in his contribution in general play, but that squad lacks leaders. and lacks quality footballers. So to have gone down the route of saying this is our biggest asset, we have an offer which was said to be in the region of 100 million euros waiting from a Saudi Arabian club. We take that money and reinvest it elsewhere. That would have been a big decision for United to make in what is already an extremely difficult summer for them.
Yes, and but United, they need money. And of course, I think they are aware they're not going to get money with the players they want to get rid of. Rashford and Sancho and I don't know, even Antony. It will never be neither of them will be a big sell for them. So how many players does United have who can give them a large amount of money? Maybe Bruno Fernandes in a transfer to Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure if Garnacho, after what Ruben Amorim did, will give them a lot of money right now.
No.
Yeah, Ruben Amorim has decreased Garnacho's value in probably 50% or something.
Marcus Rashford, they were hoping, they set a price of £40 million for him when they loaned him to Aston Villa. Rashford is again pushing the line of trying to get himself to Barcelona. I don't think it's hard to work out how Barcelona will handle that, and they will see it as a perspective of the player wants to come to us. There's a good chance Manchester United aren't able to move him elsewhere, so let's just run that through to the end of the window and offer to take him on loan with an option to buy. Jadon Sancho coming back as another highly paid player who
probably they will have to pay a bit of Rashford's salary as well, no? Because Barcelona, I'm not sure if they can afford Rashford's salary in total, no?
Yeah, exactly. Both of those players, you look at them as, unless someone comes in with a great desire to take Sancho or Rashford, and Sancho or Rashford want to go to those clubs, you look at it as a scenario where there's a very good chance United end up paying part of their salary to go and play elsewhere, which was obviously one of the things that Jim Ratcliffe was complaining about when he did that round of interviews a few months ago, talking about how difficult it was proving to be to turn Manchester United around.
Well, it takes time. It takes a lot of time to do it. We've seen it in Portugal with big clubs passing through bad moments, and it takes really a lot of time and patience from the fans, and which hardly happens. The fans don't have patience. They're expecting their team to win every season, and United are far from that yet.
Sergio, you mentioned Victor Gyokeres in that discussion of sporting players who Amorim might target. We know that Arsenal are seriously interested in the player. One of the centre forwards that they have been looking at for months now, Benjamin Sesko, another alternative, Alexander Isak also in there, although Isak looks to be way beyond the money they're capable of paying for a centre forward, particularly with Newcastle United now qualified for the Champions League, which was very important to Isak. What's the latest you're hearing on Gyokeres' stance and the options open to him if he chooses to leave Sporting after 2 successive Portuguese titles and basically a ridiculous number of goals scored in those 2 seasons in
98
Portugal.
goals, I think, 96 and 98 goals in 2 seasons, which is just ridiculous. He was the owner of the Portuguese league. He was doing whatever he wanted in the last 2 years. Is the most impressive player I've seen in Portugal probably ever. I'm not sure if I'm being unfair to Mário Jardel, but he was amazing for the last 2 years. He just turned 27, which is a problem in fact, because there's not many teams in Europe that will sign him. Sporting has an agreement with the players' agents. Although he has a buyout of 100 million euros, there's an agreement from last summer that they would take an offer between 60 and 70 million euros or in that region. But still, it's a lot of money for a 27-year-old player who has scored a lot of goals in Portugal, but who has played in 3 teams in the UK. and he has done just well in one of them in Coventry for the last 2 seasons. So it's a hard sale for these figures, I think, and I understand, because not selling a player, you're not signing a player for the next 10 years. You're signing a player for the next 5 years maybe, if things go well, and you're not going to sell him. You're not going to get your money back when you sign a 27-year-old player. You're just going to get goals and on-field value. So how many clubs can do it? I don't know, if 6, 7 maybe. And how many of those 6, 7 clubs are willing to do it? Maybe less. I'm still curious to see what's going to happen with some teams who haven't moved yet in the transfer window. I'll give an example, and I have no information about this, but Liverpool probably won't get some money for Darwin Núñez and also for Luis Diaz. So maybe Liverpool could be in the game in some weeks. There's a lot of discussion about Arsenal. Okay. Manchester United, I think that they don't have a chance of doing it. So Barcelona, no chance of doing it for the lack of money. Okay, PSG, Bayern Munich, maybe some Italian clubs could do it. Napoli, maybe. So there's not many clubs who have the money to spend on Gyokeres, and I think it's natural that people outside of Portugal have some doubts about him, but I saw him play this season in Champions League as well, and what I saw him do in Portugal in top games as well is an outstanding player. He's a player that will have a huge impact everywhere he goes. I'm pretty sure about that.
Mikel Arteta has been very clear that Arsenal have to sign a centre forward. He's placed himself in, I think, a bit of a difficult position with his claims after being eliminated from the Champions League by Paris Saint-Germain that Arsenal were the best team in Europe this season. I'm not sure how many independent observers would agree with that. He has a more complicated position.
Maybe the best team in London this season?
Yeah, I think he's safe on the best team in London, although it didn't win as many trophies as Tottenham and Chelsea and Palace.
Crystal Palace, yes.
Yeah, fourth in the trophy table count in London. A new sporting director in Andrea Berta, which is always problematic for an incumbent coach. You know that if you do not deliver on the field when a new sporting director comes, eventually the sporting director will want his own man in as coach. From what you've seen of Arsenal and what you know of Gyokeres in Portuguese football, is he sufficient to turn Arsenal into a team that finishes second in the Premier League and makes a Champions League semi-final into trophy winners?
Yeah, I think so, honestly. Gyokeres is not a great inbox finisher, He's not the kind of striker like that you could just cross and he's there. He's not very strong playing with his head as well, but he's a guy that will always find a solution to gain advantage to his team because he's really strong when he uses his body. One-to-ones is really strong. Has an easy shot as well. Can shoot easily from in short spaces. He can find space to shoot, and you have to think although it's not a league as competitive as the Premier League, of course. It's not very easy to score goals in Portugal, and you have a lot of players who come to Portugal, and you see the top scorers in Portugal. It's very rare they score more than 25 goals per season, 25, 30 goals. It doesn't happen very often. So it's not easy to score goals in Portugal. The teams, most of the teams defend in really tight and low blocks, so you don't have so much space in the back, the defensive line to run. And Gyokeres has managed to find it. Very strong player when playing deep, just receiving long balls as well. Really strong, and he can also find space against tight defenses. Inside the box. Probably not this kind of finisher who scores in the first touch. Not this way of playing, but a player that gets a lot of involvement in his the way the team plays, even opening spaces for his teammates. And we saw him this in the later stages of the season playing against Benfica, for instance, the crucial game in the league at Benfica, and there was almost a panic in the defenders when Gyokeres was receiving the ball. When there was a long pass to Gyokeres, I think there was this panic in the stadium. The defenders, there's almost a fear of what's going to happen next. And he used that as well. Instead of trying to dribble, he was just passing the ball, and he gave the assist to Trincão to score Sporting's goal at 3 minutes in the game. So I think that's the kind of player that will have an impact anywhere he goes.
Yeah, and a player who's accustomed to breaking down low blocks is obviously a good fit to what Arsenal have been facing. You mentioned Benfica there. Benfica, one of 2 Portuguese clubs who will take part in the inaugural Club World Cup that we have coming up. Ironically, not the champions or the 2 season in a row champions Sporting. It will be Benfica and Porto, who finished 2 points behind and 11 points behind the champions this season. How do you expect them to do in the Club World Cup, and what's the degree of interest in this tournament in Portugal?
I think people are getting curious about the tournament, and now it has been announced because they will be broadcasted. The games will be broadcasted by DAZN in Portugal as well, and DAZN will not show the games on their TV channels. They will just broadcast them in the app and the website of DAZN. So it's the first time we have this in Portugal, a major football competition that will not be on a linear TV, that will be only on digital platforms. Of course, I think DAZN will probably eventually get some deal with a TV channel to sell them some games, but most of the games will be just digital, which is a new thing for us. That's the first thing. Secondly, of course, the games will be in Europe. We will have a problem with an issue with the kickoff times for most of the games, or many games. That will be too late, probably. Could affect also the interest of fans. In Portugal, I would say people are, especially Benfica and Porto fans, are excited about that. In the case of Benfica will have to play Champions League qualifiers, the third qualifying round, and then the playoffs if they go there. If they reach the playoffs, they'll have to play in August 4 games to reach the Champions League. And of course, that's now the most important thing for the club. And I think Benfica will not see the World Cup as a competition where they want to be at their best moment. They want to be ready for August. They will have the Super Cup, which is a bit like the Charity Shield or the Community Shield in Portugal, against Sporting, which is also another derby, and a very important derby in the sense that Benfica lost the cup against Sporting and lost the league in the second to last week against Sporting as well. So it's an important game for Benfica. And of course, the Champions League qualifiers are really important. So I think Benfica will not be very unhappy if they are knocked out after, well, of course, maybe not in the group stage, but if they are knocked out in the last 16, I think they will not be very unhappy with that, because they will have some time to rest and then to prepare the Champions League qualifiers. For Porto, I think it's a bit different, because Porto have qualified already for the Europa League group stage, and they are more... they can seize the opportunity to do well and to show themselves, and also to try to build something, because they are rebuilding the club with the new president, with André Vilas-Boas. His first season was really tough in the club. He has changed the coach in mid-season, signed Martin Anselmi, an Argentinian, was in Mexico, and he is also under a lot of pressure now for the second season, because people are expecting Porto to be way better than they were last season, and the Club World Cup could be a good a good way to see if Porto have improved or not. So that's the feeling we have. But in Portugal, clearly, especially for Benfica, it has the focus for the club. It's to get in the Champions League. Clearly, it's not the World Cup.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's going to be interesting about the Club World Cup is to what extent the European teams take it seriously.
Yeah. If you see Salzburg, they are playing second qualifying round in the Champions League. It's even worse than Benfica. They are playing like 22, I think, of July. It will be really exhausting for them to play Club World Cup, and then they don't have holidays, and they will have to go to such an important games. And I think probably it will have big effects on the teams in the mid-season. I would say probably December, February. I think these teams will probably be paying the price of starting the season so early and not giving holidays to the players.
Yeah, especially after this season where we've had an unprecedented number of European games because of the expansion of the Champions League, Europa League. I was talking to someone at one of the clubs involved in the tournament and asking them how they felt their players would be for it, and they said, look, the biggest problem we have is the players are going on an international break now, so we have no control over them for 10 days. We can't monitor how they are. We don't know how they're going to respond to the end of the domestic season. So it's dangerous for us. We don't know where the players are going to be through the Club World Cup, regardless of anything else. And then you have these decisions about where do you allocate energies for the coming season? When do you give people holidays? This hasn't been thought through from the players' perspective. But then, when are any of these tournaments ever thought through from the players' perspective?
No, but last season you had I think a record high number of ACL injuries all over Europe, and that's a consequence of playing too much, of fatigue, and the players are overplaying right now. Of course they are, and they just create this competition, which could be a very interesting competition, but you create it in the middle of two seasons. Without planning it, without planning even the calendar, the international calendar, without telling the domestic leagues, listen, you have to reduce the number of games over there because it's impossible for the players to have a proper competition. If it's impossible to have a proper competition if the players are so tired that they just want to rest right now.
Yeah, look, you increase the number of games at a time when the intensity with which teams have to perform to succeed is probably at the highest level ever. I mean, we talked about Paris Saint-Germain. Look at the intensity with which that team runs. And that's what you need to do in the current game to be successful. The two things just don't add together.
And by the way, the French league was the only one who has reduced the number of games last season. There were 20 teams. This season, there were only 18 teams. So in France, they have reduced the number of games. I think it was the only major league in Europe where they did that.
Same number of games as the Portuguese league.
But in Portugal, we have been thinking and discussing to reduce it to 16, maybe.
Okay. Do you think that's going to happen?
Probably not, because the clubs are voting it, and the fact is that 13 of the 18 clubs every season they are in risk of being relegated. So they say no, it's better to keep the 18. The chances of being relegated are fewer than if we reduce to 16.
Let's finish with hero and villain. I'll choose a villain. I'm going to go for Internazionale and their decision to place their players into 4 days of concentration before the Champions League final, which is basically an Italian practice of keeping players in the team hotel, a special training regime ahead of the big game. And I think we all saw how ineffective and unproductive it was in the final. Sergio, who would you have as a hero of the week?
Well, I will be the most obvious. Luis Enrique, of course. It's I said before, his story is something that it's amazing, and especially the way he has faced the tragedy that he has lived. It's a huge lesson for all of us, and of course, sometimes you get paid by destiny at some point. Of course, it doesn't pay what happened to him, but he will be remembered as one of the greats of football, not only for what has done as a player and also as a coach. He has won the Champions League 2 times already for 2 different clubs, but he has also proved that you can win without the big stars that he has released from Paris Saint-Germain. So he's definitely a hero, and he will be a hero for a long, long time.
Yeah, an incredible achievement from Enrique, and very interesting to hear about the way in which he works, his ability to place football in a context. Some of the techniques he uses on day-to-day coaching are very different from other people in his position, and he's proved that his different way of thinking about the game.
And I saw that he also uses a high platform to watch training from a higher perspective, something that I think it was Lopetegui that did also in Porto, which is something that I saw already in the past.
Yeah, lots of stuff like that. One little thing I was told about is that he never names the team in the final meeting before the match until the end of the meeting. Why does he do that? Because he wants all of the players to concentrate on everything he says in that briefing, and he feels that if you announce the team at the beginning of the briefing, the guys who aren't playing shut down and don't pay attention. And it's, that's a tiny little thing, but very sensible and productive, clearly.
Definitely.
Sergio, thank you for joining us again on the Transfers podcast. We will hopefully speak to you during this summer. I'm sure there will be plenty of money spent on Portuguese players, as
hopefully.
ever.
Hopefully, let's hope so. Yeah. We're going to have a lot of stories to write in the paper, yeah.
Thanks, Sergio.
You're welcome. Thank you, Duncan.
The Transfers podcast is running an audience survey at the moment. If you have a few minutes to fill it in, please do, and give us your thoughts on the show and guide us in ways in which we can improve it and bring you better content going forward. The link is in the show notes and also on our social media platforms. You've been listening to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com. If you like what you heard, spread the word. Please follow, share and rate us. You can message the Transfers podcast on Instagram, YouTube and Facebook at Transfers Podcast. Our Twitter, Blue Sky and TikTok address is at TransfersCast. I'm on Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky at Duncan Castles. Sergio is on Instagram at Sergio Krithinas. Our production is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production, and our music by Mark Caulfield and David L. Stay safe, be well, and thank you for listening.
He did the transfer window. He and McGarry, who left us and wasn't known for a couple of years. Duncan was low. Now he's back with a new show. It's called The Transfers. It's where everyone's gonna go. The Transfers, the Transfers, the Transfers. Where everyone's gonna go. Where everyone's gonna go. The Transfers, the Transfers, the Transfers. Where everyone's gonna go. 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 Where everyone's gonna go.